Here in Module 7, in Exercise 7, there's two main objectives. And the first objective is to look at different ways to represent the surface. That could be using raster data model, vector data model, or the triangulated irregular network, or the TIN data model. And we're going to explore all of those in this particular exercise. Also, what we're doing is we're going to look at the variety of sources out there that are available to us for free in which we can acquire geographic data. In this case, we're using Google Earth Pro. So Google Earth Pro is something in which you students, I believe, can access and download. But I'll go ahead and find our data for us that we'll be using for Exercise 7. So what we're going to do is zoom into our particular study area. And of course, you can do this for any location, for your own study area. If you're doing research in, let's say, Antarctica or in Botswana, this is a way in which you can acquire data that might not be accessible, might not be available. So there might not be a digital elevation model available for a particular study area. Well, this is one way in which you can access and acquire geographic data. So here we zoomed into Wizard Island, which is the island that we're focusing in here on Exercise 7. What I'm going to first off do is going to add a path. So that this gives us a name, and so this is called Wizard Island, and we're going to be making a DEM. So I'll just go ahead and I'll put that over there. Don't hit OK yet. Notice now I've got this particular square cursor. So what we're just doing here is just kind of go all along. So I'm holding down the left button here, and so I'm just going to go zigzag all the way through here, and I'm going to try to cover as much of the island as possible. And so essentially all those red dots are individual points, and we'll come back to that and I'll show you what we're going to do with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fast forward. Now I'll go back over here to our pane that I had open here earlier, the Google Earth, and go ahead now. I'll click OK and find our location. Right click on it, click Save Place As, put it wherever you want to put it. I'm going to put, in my case, I'm going to put it in Documents. Here, make sure you have two options, KML, KMZ. Make sure the .kml option is chosen. Then click Save. Now go ahead and navigate to your Google and do a search for GPS Visualizer. And so you can do this in any browser, but just do an essential search and click on gpsvisualizer.com. Here, go up to Lookup Elevations, click on it, come down over here to Upload a File, and we'll go to, and make sure to navigate to the .kml file, click Open. In this case, make sure GPX file is clicked, and then Convert and Add Elevation. And here's the code from all of that, and so all those are individual lat long, and you'll notice that also an elevation for that particular lat and long. You'll see click to download, so go ahead and right click that, and then you'll want to save that as wizard_island.gpx. Click Save. So in sum, what we've done is we've created tons of points that show the locations of different locations here on this particular island. In the old days, what you used to do is for survey techniques, you used to go put your GPS there and another place there, and so you could, with about, let's say, 1,000 different GPS inputs, you could do that, but that would take weeks to do. Essentially, what we just did was use digital technologies to kind of essentially go over this area and create a ton, probably upwards to 1,000 individual points on this particular island. And what we're going to do now is then in ArcGIS, convert those points to actual elevations so that we can then create a digital elevation model. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take these point data that shows X, Y, and Z that we acquired here from Google Earth and create a raster model, a grid model that creates essentially a surface representation of this particular island. Now let's start the part of the exercise 7 that you're going to work on specifically. Make sure in settings to go to settings, then licensing, then scroll down to configure licensing options, and make sure the 3D Analyst and Spatial Analyst boxes are checked. 3D Analyst checked, Spatial Analyst checked. Click on OK, and now go back to the main open page. Start with the map. We're going to put this in the exercise 7 folder. and call it exercise_7_raster. Click on OK. First thing we want to do is get the map in the right projection system so that when we add the data, everything's already ready to roll. So go down to Properties after right-clicking on Map, Coordinate Systems, and now we're going to go to the Projected Coordinate System, then State Systems, and then let's find Oregon. Okay, Oregon's got its own folder, Oregon, and we're going to do the first one. Click on OK. All right, so now let's go get our data. So let's go get those points, those GPS coordinates, essentially those XY coordinates that also have with it elevation data. And those were acquired from Google Earth in an exercise and steps I've already shown. So go to Analysis, then Tools, and in the Geoprocessing Tools, search for GPX2 features. And then we'll want to use the wizardisland.gpx file for the input here. And then for the output feature class, we'll just let ArcGIS choose what to name it and where to put it, and go ahead and click on Run. And this process should take about 3 to 4 minutes. I'm going to right-click on our table so we can take a look at it here, and what we'll see is 3,278 individual points were created. So essentially what we're doing now is those are individual X and Y locations, and if we scroll over to the right we see elevation, and so that would be the Z value. So now let's take these individual points, so let's take this layer here and let's turn it into a raster grid. Go back up to Tools, and this time IDW. What that does is that stands for Inverse Distance Weighted, and it's a particular technique, as it shows here. It interpolates a raster surface from points. So to show you what I mean, we'll go ahead and put this in action. So go ahead and click on that. There's two options, the 3D Analyst or the Spatial Analyst. It doesn't matter since you checked those boxes earlier, but we'll just do the Spatial Analyst option. The input features would be our particular GPX to features. In terms of our Z value, we're going to use elevation. And so for everything else, we'll just leave as is and then click on Run. That took me about 2 minutes for my machine to create the raster that we can see now behind the points. And so what this did was this essentially takes these points and interpolates, or kind of guesses, okay, so there's no point right where this particular hand is located, but it just kind of uses a kind of a weighting at this variety of statistical measures to kind of guesstimate what it is. And so this technique, you also see this used in hotspot analyses. To maybe, for example, to maybe identify a cluster of higher rates of a particular virus or a particular disease. Same idea applies here, but in this case we're using elevation. All right, so now let's go ahead and remove the dots, and so now we have a look at our particular island. What we can do is we can then adjust the symbology by going up here and clicking Appearance, then Symbology, Classify. In this case, change the classes to the max. We're going to make it the max number, 32. Further, we know that this is all water, this particular, this green layer, let's say. And so what we can do is we can then adjust by clicking on that particular first green square and choosing whatever we might think would represent water. And if we zoom in now, what we've done is we've essentially used Google Earth to create a raster, and if I just click on right there at this particular location, this particular specific grid cell has a elevation of 1,906 feet above sea level, but then also has an XY location that we see there. So here we've created a raster image of Wizard Island. Finally, let's go to the map. Right-click, and let's change the name by going up to General. Let's call this Raster. You'll see why later. and of course click Save. And we've now completed the first step, or the first map, for this particular exercise.